Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. How Srila Prabhupada has explained this verse is a good example of the kind of explanation that makes non-devotional commentators angry at Srila Prabhupada. There's no direct mention of Krishna in this verse, but Srila Prabhupada explains it. I mean, in the Sanskrit, spoken by Krishna, there's no direct mention of Krishna, but Krishna's pure devotee, who is presenting Bhagavad-gita as it is, explains the purport starting off with the words, "The supreme transcendental truth is Lord Krishna." And non-devotee commentators, very expert in their own imagination scholars, so you see, he's not explaining it properly. It doesn't say about Krishna. And why is he saying about Krishna? Srila Prabhupada goes on to further assert the whole Bhagavad-gita centers around the declaration that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which can also be taken as a justification or an explanation of why the first statement in the purport is that the Supreme Transcendental Truth is Lord Krishna. And non-devotee scholars, in their agnostic manner, their neutral manner, will contest this. Agnostic in the sense that, how do you translate agnostic in Hindi? What word would you use? What do you say for agnostic? What would you say? There's probably, it's nirapekshvadis, maybe. Someone who's supposed to be neutral, who has no particular position. The word agnostic, its general usage in, okay, you look at what to do. If you don't know, look it up. Google it. Anishvaravadi. But that means atheist, actually. But the word agnostic in English is different. An atheist is someone who doesn't believe in God, which has the position, has a philosophical, or supposedly philosophical position, that there is no God, which translates to Anishvaravadi. But agnostic means someone who's not committed. He says, I don't know. Actually, if you look at the etymology, then it comes to the same thing as atheist. But agnostic is generally taken to mean someone who doesn't commit. I don't know if there's a God or not. I'm not sure, and I'm not taking any position. Sangshayvadi. Yeah, maybe that's pretty close. I was going to say nirapekshvadi, that we are not taking any particular position. Sangshayvadi, I guess that would be closest to skeptic. They doubt everything. A skeptic says, I doubt everything. So then we can ask him, do you doubt what you just said? And then he's caught. Of course, when he has to go and pass stool, he doesn't doubt that he has to pass stool. If he has diarrhea, He can doubt as much as he like, but the gunk will still come out of his backside. He doesn't seem to doubt very much when it's time for him to eat a meal. I doubt, maybe this food is poisoned. We put it through a bunch of chemical tests. Are the chemical tests bona fide chemical tests? I doubt it. You can go on forever. It's a nonsense idea. Impractical. Anyway, agnostic, the term agnostic is also applied to academia. The academia is supposed to be agnostic, inasmuch as we're not really sure about anything. We can't take any position on anything. Some things we can accept. 1 + 1 = 2. Although a philosopher, in the Western understanding of the term philosopher, can also question that. Regularly, if you follow the science pages of the popular press, you'll see something, such and such a discovery, it will change the whole of the discipline of archaeology or physics or whatever it is. The latest one I saw, I haven't been looking in the last few days, is that the whole idea of dark matter is maybe wrong according to our latest discoveries. I always thought it was wrong, because it was just made up, because their laws of gravity don't work. So they had to invent dark matter, which you can't see it, but it must be there, otherwise our laws don't work. And the laws must work because so many scientific and practical technology is based on it. Anyway, the academia is agnostic, so they will not accept, they don't like academic scholars of Bhagavad-gita don't like statements which is supposed to be an explanation of Bhagavad-gita, such as the supreme transcendental truth is Lord Krishna. What they would like to do is, well, Shankara says this, and Ramanuja says this, and Nimbaka says this, and Madhva says this, and they're all the different opinions. And it seems, if we analyze this word, that Shankara's explanation is more correct in this sense, but if we go to another verse, Ramanuja's explanation is better. Actually, there was one scholar, Western scholar, who took upon himself the job of translating various Vedanta commentaries. And in the forward to, I can't remember whether it was a Sri Bhashya or Shariraka Bhashya. In the forward to Sri Bhashya, Ramanuja's commentary, he stated, the Western scholar stated, that it seems to me that Ramanuja actually explains the text much more practically and realistically according to what the text actually states, for which he was harangued by followers much better than Shankara. Ramanuja's explanations seem to make much more sense, one thing, and another thing, they seem to better explain the text. And then Shankara's followers do what nowadays is called trolling or hate speech against this scholar, who said, well, I was just giving a neutral opinion as a scholar, so he left it out of the next edition, he removed it. But Srila Prabhupada presents Bhagavad-gita as it is. In other words, although it is a fact, by the fact that many people have explained Gita in different ways, So in that sense, it can be said that the Gita can be explained in different ways. But Srila Prabhupada is presenting Bhagavad-gita with the understanding that Krishna had a particular message to deliver to Arjuna. He didn't just splurge out a bunch of statements which various philosophers can jump on and twist it this way, that way, and the other way, and come up with various meanings according to their understanding, which Srila Prabhupada is also accused of, that he's taken the message of Bhagavad-gita and just unpacked it in such a way to fit his message, his preconceived message. His Holiness Shivaram Swami has written a very good book. He wrote it many years ago. It is probably still available, called the Bhakti-vedanta Purports, in which he responds to various accusations of various scholars that Bhagavad-gita as it is not factually presenting the message of Bhagavad-gita. And he analyzes very analytically that actually the whole message of Gita is, as Srila Prabhupada writes here, the whole Bhagavad-gita centers around the declaration that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In which case, it is perfectly legitimate to explain all the verses of Bhagavad-gita according to this understanding, which Krishna very clearly gives from the 7th chapter onwards, very straightforwardly. Mata parataram nanyat kinchidasti dhananjaya. There's nothing superior to me, Arjuna. Not even slightly. And then from then on, again and again, Krishna, he establishes this, aham hi sarva yajnanam bhukta cha prabhureva cha. Then at the end of the 5th chapter, Bhaktar, it's right there, isn't it? Bhaktaram, before the end of the 6th chapter, he gives a pre-7th chapter hint. Bhaktaram yagyatapasam sarvaloka maheshwaram suhridam sarvabhutanam gyatva ma shantim richati. Krishna declares himself to be the enjoyer of all sacrifices, which can be extrapolated to understand he's the enjoyer of everything. He's the supreme enjoyer. He's the controller of all planets. He's the supreme friend of everyone. In short, he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as Arjuna verbalizes it. Param Brahma, Param Dhamma, Pavitram Paramam Bhavan, Purusham, Shashvatam, Divyam, Adi Devam Ajam Vibhum. In short, Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So when there are references to Brahman in the earlier part of, and throughout the Bhagavad-gita, then it is quite legitimate in the context of the whole Bhagavad-gita to explain the word Brahman as Krishna. That is, in short, the logic. This is the point that Srila Prabhupada wants to establish very strongly, as Krishna establishes himself very strongly, but those who are not devotees, they do not want to accept this. They're attracted to Krishna in the form of his Bhagavad-gita, but they love the Bhagavad-gita, but they don't love Krishna. which is impossible. It's a kind of attraction to Krishna. So many demons are attracted to Krishna. Shishupal was attracted to Krishna. He was always talking about Krishna. Kamsa was very much attached to Krishna, but not favorably. But he couldn't stop thinking of Krishna. If we could think of Krishna as intensely as Kamsa did, but in a favorable mood, that would be a very high level of devotion. So the whole Bhagavad-gita centers around the declaration that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This word, declaration, it's a statement, can be taken as a statement that is to be accepted. Just comes in my mind now. As a child, seeing the news on television, it was a big thing in the news at one point. It must have been, well, you could look it up, late 1960s or early 1970s. You're nodding your head like this. You don't have a clue what I'm going to say. No one has a clue what I'm going to say. I doubt it very much. If I asked every one of you what I was going to say, you wouldn't be able to imagine. But I believe the name of the politician was Ian Smith. But anyway, the point was that Rhodesia had made a universal declaration of independence from the United Kingdom. And it was a big thing. In other words, they're saying, we don't care about you anymore. Britain, we're not under you, and we're just going to be independent. Rhodesia, nowadays called Zimbabwe. Have you been there? You've been there. He's a world traveler, used to travel around squeezing money out of people. That was his job. It's a good job if you do it for Krishna. Otherwise not. So declaration means this is what we say. We stand by this. What are you going to do about it? Because the British, of whom I identified myself at the young age of whatever it was at the time, felt affronted by that. They could have asked for permission and then we could have given it to them, but no, unilateral declaration means we're doing it from our side. We don't care about what you say, but we are just declaring. The declaration of the state, the new state of Bangladesh was made by Zia Rahman in Chattogram. According to the history books of Bangladesh, which have just been revised, now that power has changed. Otherwise, actual history, if you go back to the history as it actually happened, was that the Pakistani army, they were never going to surrender to the Bengalis. They would have died to the last man. They thought it was an insult. We're not going to surrender to the Bengal. We'll surrender to the Indian army, who actually facilitated the independence in the first place. Otherwise, Bangladesh would still be East Pakistan if the Indian army hadn't gone in there. Anyway, this is all politics. And we're not talking about politics. I'm just talking about the point. Declaration. It's a statement that this is how it's going to be, and we're doing it. We say it. We stand by it. So the whole Bhagavad-gita centers around the declaration that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And the whole material world centers around the ignorance, as Srila Prabhupada would pronounce it, that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. ignorance. There's a word ignore, which is etymologically linked with the word ignorance, although they have different meanings in modern English. Ignore means to know that something is there, but you don't bother with it. And ignorance means you just don't know. So they're two different things. But in relation to the materialistically conditioned souls, in relation to Krishna, the two things come to the same thing, because by ignoring Krishna, we forget Krishna. Krishna bahimukh hoya bhogavancha kare. We ignore Krishna. We turn away from Krishna. It comes to the same thing. Krishna bhuli, sejiv, anadi bahimukh. Forgetting Krishna, we become from time immemorial inimical to Krishna. So the whole material existence is going on various different declarations. The demoniac declaration, as also we find in Bhagavad-gita, described by Lord Krishna, is Ishvaroham aham bhogi, siddhoham balavan sukhi. I am God, I am the controller, I am the enjoyer, I am perfect, powerful, and happy. This statement, if made by anyone except Krishna, is demoniac. But that is the nature of the demons. To declare, Ishvaroham, I am the boss here. They may not actually say, I am God, but they may do also. There are some people who actually declare they are God, but they take that position of being very powerful, very much above others. People are very much interested in prestige and status. They want to show themselves better than others. You can drive a cheap car and it'll take you from one side of Tirupati town to another side. And a cheap car, is Maruti still a cheap car? Although it looks a bit better than the original Maruti. The original Maruti looked very cheap. And this little car made by Tata, they wanted to make, it was too cheap, and people didn't want to buy it. It was below their standard. If you're going to buy a car, it has to look, you're not going to buy the car that everyone knows is for people who can't really afford a car, but it's like an auto rickshaw with it's closed in. So it was a flop. They thought it'd be a huge hit. Everyone can afford a car, but no one wanted to buy it because it's a poor man's car. So it's below their dignity. So you can buy Maruti Suzuki, the cheapest one is how much? 7 lakhs? I'm just guessing off the top of my head. 2 lakhs. 2 to 3 lakhs only. Okay, and you can get in that and it will drive you from you can drive it from one side of the town to the other. You can also buy a BMW car if you have enough money, which will cost how many crores? Starting? 1 crore? 40 lakhs. Only 40 lakhs, damn cheap. Or you can buy a Rolls Royce. I don't see Rolls Royces in India. You don't see them much anywhere. Maybe in Los Angeles you used to see them a lot because there are a lot of rich people there. In London you see, very prestigious car. I never saw in Dubai even. Maybe, probably when the Emir goes out, what's his name, Sheikh, he goes out in a Rolls. He probably doesn't allow anyone else to have. Very expensive car. That's really very prestigious. But it does the job of taking you from one side of the town to the other, but one is much more expensive than the other. And it is probably somewhat more comfortable and has some little gadgets and things more than the Maruti. But the difference in the price, you could have roti and dal for the rest of your life and your family, and the difference in the price. Why do people buy such an expensive thing? It's only for prestige, mainly for prestige. People are so much interested in it. Srila Prabhupada wants to smash everyone's false prestige. The Mayavadis are also very much interested in that. They say we have to get rid of ahankar, but their whole idea of ahankar is the whole sense of thinking that I am. The sense of I am should be totally obliterated. You see, the same word, ahankara, is a very well known word in Indian languages, especially in Vedanta discourse, or Bhagavad-gita discourse, spiritual discourses. But the understanding of the word ahankar of the Mayavadis and the understanding of the Vaishnavas is different. Very different. Because the Mayavadis say you have to get rid of the sense of I-ness. If you think of I, and Buddhists are very similar in this regard, the sense of thinking of myself as a discrete personality, that has to be dissolved. But the Vaishnavas, they want to keep the sense of I-ness, but change it from thinking Ishvaroham, I am God, I am the controller, to Dasoham. Specific, I am the servant, specifically, I am the servant of Krishna. The symptom of ahankaram balam darpam, kamam krodham jasangshitaha. We say someone is very ahankari or very egoistic in English. So that is the symptom of a demon who's has a very high opinion of himself and behaves with others in a very proud way. This is a symptom of a demon, completely overcome by lust and anger. They take shelter of that. Or it may be that he may be a yogi or a sadhu who has superficially conquered his karma and krodha. Superficially he's very peaceful, but internally he's very egoistic about that. And it may manifest externally in his behavior also. Srila Prabhupada presented Bhagavad-gita as it is, as the first thrust or the main thrust in the philosophical attack on what? On what? Who will say? Philosophical attack on what? On everything. On everything except the acceptance that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Fighting with everything. Especially Nirvishesha, Shunyavada. We sing every day, we say every day, we praise Prabhupada like this. It's not meant only to be praise of Srila Prabhupada, but it's all that pranam mantra should also remind us that we're supposed to be carrying forward the mission of Srila Prabhupada. It's not that Jai Prabhupada, he stood against impersonalism, Hari Bol, but we are supposed to carry that on. If we're disciples, we have to carry on the mission, which in the many, many ways he could have defined his mission. He made his own pranam mantra. He composed it himself because his disciples were too ignorant at the time to be able to do. So he composed it himself. He could have defined his mission in so many ways. He defined it as First of all, as himself being the servant of his Guru, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, preaching the message of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the Western world. That was the mission given to him by his Guru. And specifically stated, Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarni, saving the Western world from impersonalism and voidism. So it's not that fight against impersonalism and voidism should be closed and then we can praise Prabhupada and forget about doing it ourselves. We also have to fight with Mayavadis and fight with everything. There are so many things. Dhruva Maharaj was fighting, it seemed like he was fighting against the whole universe. There are weapons, all different types of weapons coming at him from all sides. They're all illusory. Remembering Narayana, simply putting the Narayanastra on his bow, they all got dissipated. So Srila Prabhupada was fighting against all wrong ideas, which means every idea. He didn't directly counteract every single philosophy, although he did have discussions about various philosophies and counteracted them. But he gave the template in Bhagavad-gita as it is, especially for counteracting all wrong ideas. What is the way to counteract? What is the formula for counteracting all wrong ideas? Krishna's tu Bhagavan Swayam. Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. I was speaking on that this morning. That I was saying that is specifically we are to understand the teachings of Shastra through this pithy statement. But it's not just meant for us. It's meant for broadcasting to the world. So many wrong ideas going on in the world, and many of them may sound right, and many of them may have a touch of correctness in them. Just like the idea of Marxism, the idea that, well, why should any group be privileged over another? That we can accept with a major modification. The modification is understanding that we're all equal in the eyes of Krishna. But we're all, as jivas, we all have equal opportunity to serve Krishna. But in material existence, we have different bodies, different psychophysical propensities and abilities. That cannot be negated simply by imagination. And the Marxist, the history of communism, is making everyone equal by killing everyone who doesn't agree that everyone is equal. So there's no one left to combat your philosophy because they don't exist anymore. And there's some religion like that also, that our religion is right, and if you don't believe it, you're wrong and you should be killed. And then we can all live in peace, because it's the religion of peace. But first we have to kill all the people who don't believe in our religion. Then we can have peace. And usually they fight among themselves also. Tamagun. It's a tamasic religion. But there are some good things there also. At least they believe in God. They get up early in the morning and pray to God. At least they're supposed to. Actually, everyone's supposed to. Even in Christianity, in Hinduism, traditionally people would rise early for prayer. It's gone. So many wrong ideas. And Srila Prabhupada, the perfect representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, by his teachings and by his life, He demonstrated that perfection means to accept that I am the eternal servant of Krishna. And so many things he had to combat, and we have to combat. If we are not to simply go to our temple and have a nice talk and have nice prasadam, nice kirtan, okay, that's good, that's nice, but we're supposed to do more. We're supposed to establish the fact within the world that Jiva Surupoi Krishna Nityadas is not our belief, but it pertains to everyone, and everyone should accept this for their own benefit. Elsewhere in this Bhagavad-gita as it is, Srila Prabhupada states, that's in the verse beginning, Ayatir Shadhayopeto, that what happens to the fallen transcendentalists. Srila Prabhupada says that taking up Krishna consciousness is like again the word declaring war on the illusory energy. So it's not surprising if some fall away. It's like a war. Srila Prabhupada often used military analogies, martial analogies. It's all documented in my upcoming book, The Mood and Mission of Srila Prabhupada. He was very much in the mood of we're fighting for Krishna, like Arjuna, as Hanuman did also. So many wrong ideas in the world. Where do you start? And then even within the Vaishnava society, if these ideas are admitted, then the Vaishnava society becomes contaminated. And we may say, yes, we're following Srila Prabhupada, but don't like that thing very much. Yeah, I like everything Prabhupada says, but not this and not that. So when we do our Bhakti Shastra courses, when Prabhupada says things like, women are less intelligent, we read it and we don't comment on it, that's all. In other words, we don't want to touch that. And very intelligent devotees may even write books to show how Srila Prabhupada got it wrong in some cases. Which means the Shastra also got it wrong, because Srila Prabhupada spoke according to Shastra. It wasn't that he made all these things up. So if we find it difficult to understand due to our cultural conditioning, which people previously didn't find any problem to understand, then we should see how it is correct. Try to understand how it is correct and not reject it. Then there's no meaning to having a guru. Arjuna said to Krishna, Sarvam etadritang manye yanmang vadasi Keshava. I accept as true everything that you say. Now, Arjuna had challenged what Krishna said or questioned what he said. But there came a point where he said, okay, at the outset, Shishaste hang shadimang tvam prapannam. I don't know. Nahi praprashyami manapanudyad yachokam uchoshanam indriyanam. I don't know how to get out of this misery. I don't know what's beneficial for me. I surrender to you. But when Krishna started to instruct him, he'd say, well, that doesn't sound right, this doesn't sound right. And then Krishna would explain. And there came a point where Arjuna accepted, yes, everything you say is correct. So that should be the outlook of the disciple. If he doesn't understand why the guru is correct, then he should ask him, I don't understand this, please explain it. And the guru should explain that according to Shastra, Guru Sadhu Shastra, according to the authorities which are there. Not that he just makes up something. There's a misconception that everything the Guru says must be right because he's the Guru. That's not correct. He is the Guru because everything he says is right. And how can we know if everything he says is right? There's a check and balance system. Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. What Shastras are. But then Shastra is, there may be so many things said in Shastra. Lord Krishna himself speaks about this. Na rupa masyeha tatopa labhyate, na anto na chade na cha sampratishta, ashvatamenam suvirudha mulam asanga shastrena dhrudhena chittava. Speaking about the Vedic teachings, it may seem like a huge jungle, like a banyan tree which has grown. You don't know where the beginning or the end is, but you have to cut it by detachment. So that gives a clue that as long as we're trying to pursue sense gratification, we can't get clear spiritual knowledge. And this is, or should be, axiomatic. That's why there are monks, not only in the Vedic tradition, in the Buddhist tradition also, actually chronologically in this Kali Yuga, Buddhist monks formed in orders came before Shankara, who is in retrospect seen as the founder of modern Hinduism. There were ascetics, individual ascetics, but with them also, the understanding that if we're trying to enjoy this world, we can't make spiritual progress. And we said, monks in Christianity also, they're supposed to follow rules, a life of discipline. Rising early in the morning. Eating simple food, no sex. Big austerity for the conditioned soul. But it's taken as axiomatic that you cannot make spiritual, you can't begin to understand these things if we're still trying to enjoy the senses. So Srila Prabhupada, in propagating Krishna consciousness, he gave the philosophy and he also gave a lot of prasadam. That's very important. People take it as ordinary food in the sense that it's nice for my tongue, but it has its transcendental effect. However, Srila Prabhupada said that we should explain that it is prasad. What is the meaning of prasad? That will have better effect. So fighting in Kali Yuga means by the Sankirtan movement, chanting the holy names in public is very important for purifying the consciousness. Having festivals which are appealing to people. In this verse, early in the Bhagavatam, Tadvag Visargo Janataga Viplavo Yasmin Pratishlokam Abhadavatyapi Namanyanantasya Yashonkitani Yachtrinvanti Gayanti Gurnanti Sadavaha. This message of Bhagavatam is meant for bringing about a revolution in the misdirected lives of a sinful population. Even if improperly presented, it is heard, sung and accepted by purified men who are thoroughly honest. Very interesting unpacking, interpretation of the term sadavaha. Purified men who are thoroughly honest. So in this verse, Narada is stating that the message, what became manifested as the Bhagavatam, will bring about a change. It will purify it'll bring out a revolution, not just a revolution. The very word is there, viplavaha, in the misdirected lives of a sinful population. And in the purport, Srila Prabhupada talks about having festivals, kirtan, prasadam distribution, pleasing to people. Rich people should sponsor this. This purport to this verse, it's practically a mission statement, a manifesto of Srila Prabhupada's preaching mission. We can read it from time to time. So this is required. Fighting with Maya means philosophically fighting, and giving the book bombs, very powerful bombs, these books, and chanting the holy names, and inviting people to come, sing and dance with us, to awaken the spiritual consciousness. By hearing the holy names, people start to become purified so that they can begin to accept this message. It's not an easy message for the conditioned soul to accept. For so many lifetimes, we've turned away from Krishna. The manifesto, the declaration, Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, brings along with it the concomitant, unstated understanding that we are all meant to surrender to Krishna. He is God. We should do what He wants, what He says. So many things, so many wrong ideas. There's impersonalism, voidism, ignorance of the very fact of reincarnation. The whole Western world is very proud of its civilization, but it's on the basis of ignorance that there is rebirth repeatedly. They don't even know this basic fact of existence, that we are born again and again and again. And as I often say, Hindus also don't believe in reincarnation. Theoretically they do, but if they actually believed in it, they'd live their lives very differently to the way they live it. If we actually believe there's reincarnation, and then for everything we do there's karmic reaction, then people would be much more thoughtful about how they live their lives. But the demoniac civilization has been very successful in making the generally foolish people more and more foolish, with more and more wrong ideas. And then then there are no more ideas left. There's no more discussion of philosophy, right, wrong. It's just enjoy yourself, that's all, just like animals. So it's a great fight. We all have to take part in this. Fighting with our brothers and sisters means all jivas, they're all our friends. No one is our enemy. We can see everyone, even if they're against us, they're opposed to us. Actually, they're all servants of Krishna. They've just forgotten, that's all. We have to wake them up. It may be very difficult if they're trying to kill us, literally, or they're trying to block our message or impede our message. Somehow we have to find a way to bring everyone to the lotus feet of Lord Chaitanya. It's possible. Nothing is impossible. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is the supreme controller, but He's given minute independence to the conditioned souls. minute independence to the jivas. Sorry, I'll correct that statement. Who misusing it become conditioned by the three modes of material nature. Tribhir gunamayar bhavar ebi sarvamidang jagat. Mohitang na bijanati mamebhya paramavyayam. Conditioned by the three modes. They don't know Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And the manifestation of those modes, the lower modes of nature. Tamogun, the worst manifestation of tamogun is in Vrita Hingsa. That is one of the characteristics of Kali Yuga mentioned in the Bhagavatam. Meaningless violence. People are just violent. Why? No reason. They just want to kill someone. That's all. We see that more and more. The symptoms of Kali Yuga. Darshyatvam satyamevahi. Arrogance. Simply stating something. What's the word? I can't remember. There is an English term for it. Shamelessly stating something which is untrue. But if you say it with it is a fact that this planet, the human race, is infiltrated by lizard species from another planet. People believe it. It might be true. I can't prove it's not true. One devotee, one god sister said to me, well, you know, Arjuna, he married Ulupi from the Naga kingdom, the snake kingdom, so maybe it is possible. Personally, I doubt it, but there are many people who believe. Not in India very much, but there are significant number of people in the Western, probably in the English speaker, I don't know if they bothered translating their stuff into other languages, who believe that the earth, the human race at the present time is governed by a lizard-like, is that right? You know about this from America? By a reptilian species that is intermarried with humans, and they're insidiously controlling the human race. And people believe it. And all kinds of things you can say. Fake news. People believe something. It's just stated. It's stated on Facebook. Someone makes an assertion. And people believe it. They may go and kill themselves on the basis of what they believe. So to find out the truth is the business. What is the ultimate truth? That is the business of philosophy. Srila Prabhupada opens his preface to the Srimad Bhagavatam with it would be an unexpected statement if you're expecting a religious book. He states that the conception of God and the conception of the absolute truth are not on the same level. The Srimad Bhagavatam hits on the target of the absolute truth. The Bhagavatam is an explanation of the Brahma Sutras, the absolute truth. So the Bhagavatam approaches the topic of Krishna's to Bhagavan Swayam from the platform of establishing Krishna as the supreme absolute truth. As stated in the first verse of Srimad Bhagavatam, Satyam Param Dhimahi. Who is that Satyam Param? Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Janmadya Seyataha, explaining what is that Brahma from the Brahma Sutras. Anyway, there's so many things. We have to fight so many wrong ideas. In the world in general, within Vaishnav society, as Srila Prabhupada said, it's not an easy-going life. Simply sit and do some bhajan and feel nice. Krishna consciousness does make us feel nice. But if we're thinking, I want to do Krishna consciousness because it makes me feel nice, then we're not going to get the ultimate gift which Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to give, which is asrishava padaritang panashtumam adarshanang marmahatam karotu va yata tata va vidithatu lampato mat prananatas tu saevanapara. What happens to me, I don't care. Krishna makes me happy, good. He makes me unhappy, but that's up to him. I'm just sold out to him. That is the Mahabhav of Radharani, which we aspire to follow in the footsteps of Gopi Bhartur, Padakamalayo, Dasu Das Anudas. To be the servant, Srila Prabhupada said 100 times removed, and then that got even more. In devotee parlance, we usually say, nowadays we say 1,000 times removed. So we may say, well, I'm the servant of the servant of the servant of the servant of the servant, and if you get further away, then you're less connected. So you can do whatever you like, right? Because you're the servant of the servant of the servant of the servant, so you don't have to do what Krishna wants, because you're the servant of the servant. But no, to be the servant of 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 the servant 1,000 times removed of Krishna means we do exactly what Krishna wants in that position as the servant of the servant of the servant of the servant. It requires full surrender. Not easy, but tad buddhayas tad atmanas tad nishtas tad parayanaha gachantya punar avritin jnana nirdhuta kalmashaha. When one's intelligence, mind, faith and refuge are all fixed in the Supreme, then one becomes fully cleansed of misgivings through complete knowledge and thus proceeds straight on the path of liberation. So now you're all going to proceed on the path back to wherever you came from. Maybe not straight. Some devotees from Gujarat are going to go to Sri Rangam. Not exactly a straight route. But remember, wherever we're wandering in this world, we're all servants of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mission as servant of the servant of the servant of the servant of the servant. We have to be fully cleansed of misgivings through complete knowledge, fixing our intelligence, mind, faith and refuge in the Supreme, which means Krishna. And we have to serve the mission of Krishna. Hare Krishna. So we'll finish there. You can all disperse. Hare Krishna. Thank you again for coming to the festival. Thank you to the organizers. Thank you to the garland makers, rangoli makers, and flower arrangers, and so many things I can't remember. Translators, Vyasa-san carriers. It's a heavy Vyasa-san. The Guru might not be heavy, but the Vyasa-san surely is. The pujaris keeping the panchapatras clean. So many things have to be done. Sabji cutting, rice washing, booking the hotels, paying the bills. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Hope to see you next year, if not before that. Thank you to the drama groups. What didn't I say? There must be so many things. Book distributors, doctor. Hope the doctor didn't have much to do, didn't have much service. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Shri Venkateshwara Bhagavan ki jai. Hare Krishna.